Hey, Rachel, great to see you.
Great to see you.
Thanks for giving me some of your time. Really
Oh, yeah,
appreciate
no
it. I know
problem.
you're a busy lady, especially being a mom. So let's start with how this whole journey to motherhood really began for you.
So around 10 years ago, I started noticing a trend among my friends, which were that women were staying single longer and we were investing in our educations and our careers. And my friends were kind of not interested in getting married or hadn't found the right person. And some of them were, starting to worry that, they were going to run into fertility problems. And I started thinking about it and I started yeah, and I looked at my own life, and I, was in a similar situation from them. And I started thinking about it, and I thought, women don't really have a modern roadmap for family planning and also career planning, and something that helps us balance both. And so I started exploring the trends, and I started interviewing a lot of women, and that became the first edition of my book, In Her Own Sweet Time: Unexpected Adventures in Finding Love, Commitment, and Motherhood. And then about 2 years ago, a publisher came to me and said, we'd love for you to do an updated edition of the book because there have been some interesting, turns in the original trends that you identified. Mostly that when I was first writing about egg freezing and was an early adopter of egg freezing, I got my eggs frozen when I was 37.
What year
It
was
was
that?
still considered, it was in 2008 that I did it. Um, and egg freezing was still considered experimental by the American Society of Reproductive Medicine. But then in 2012, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine took the experimental label off of egg freezing, and that opened it up for more people to feel that they could use it as what I call, when I go out and I lecture to young women. I speak at colleges and I speak into companies and to organizations. I give a talk called "The Pill." Why I Froze My Eggs, the Pill of the Technology Generation. And the reason that I titled this talk that is because, in the 1960s, women started using the birth control pill as a tool to turn off their fertility. And because we turned off our fertility, it allowed us to get educated. It allowed us to invest in our careers. It allowed us to, instead of just making babies, not just making babies is very important, but it allowed us to create things for the world. And now, fast forward, 40, 50, 40 years, and all of that advancement that the pill gave us, which was, more years of education, more years of our career, has sort of put us in this work-life balance quandary. And many of us are, staying single longer, and because we're putting our economic power ahead of our procreative power. And so, luckily, this new technology came along, egg freezing, that allows women to put their eggs on ice and then turn on their fertility when they need to. And because there's no longer an experimental label on it, there more and more women are choosing it, and increasingly more and more companies are starting to cover it on their health insurance plans.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like what you said about how we put our economic power in front of what we were making for the world and how now we're trying to find that balance. So, how have you balanced everything in your journey to motherhood?
Well, I've balanced everything by, I didn't have my son until I was a little bit older. And and the reason that I didn't have him was because I wasn't ready yet. I mean, I spent most of my 30s traveling. I mean, there are chapters in Her Own Sweet Time in which I go to India, in which I go to Costa Rica. In fact, there's a whole chapter in Her Own Sweet Time called The Sweetness of Doing Nothing, where I kind of take a break from trying to, balance my life, including, finding the love of my life or, thinking about having children. And I just go out and travel and be. And it's called, so the chapter is called The Sweetness of Doing Nothing because I just went out to be for, there were 6 months where I just traveled. I went to Argentina, I went to Brazil and went to Carnival. So I don't think that, I think that one of the important messages is that women put a lot of pressure on themselves now, to have to balance it all, to find the right guy, and to get married at the right time, and to have a child before their biological clock runs out. And I think the main message of In Her Own Sweet Time is that you don't have to have it all at once, and you don't have to do it all in the traditional order. And I think what egg freezing really does is helps women buy themselves an insurance policy and a little bit of time to make those decisions, whether it is invest more in their career, or whether it is find the right guy, or or just travel, like I did in Her Own Sweet Time for a couple of years.
So do you feel like that's what egg freezing did for you, is kind of turn that panic, as you said in your book, into peace?
Yeah, I would definitely say it turned panic into peace. I mean, when I was 37, I had not found the love of my life yet, and so I decided to freeze my eggs, and that is, definitely made me feel more peaceful because I had this insurance policy. And then, coming up at 40, I I had many suitors, but I still hadn't really found the person that I was willing to commit my life to. And it got to be the point that, many of these suitors, could have been the father of my child, but I also didn't want to make the wrong decision and marry somebody just because they were willing to have a baby with me, because I really didn't feel that true connection that I felt like I could live my whole life with them. And ultimately, I decided to, put the cart before the horse and have a baby on my own. I did a lot of research to make sure that it was healthy for the child. To bring a child into a single mom by choice family, or what I call a DIY mom family, do it yourself motherhood. And, basically, which is, taking the means of production into your own hands. And, by making that choice, I actually, the great irony of all of this talk about egg freezing and like relying on reproductive technology is that I got pregnant just through a normal intrauterine insemination cycle, no drugs, at 41. So I mean, I think that, that's an example of turning panic into peace, because, they say that, a woman who's trying to get pregnant, often, there's a lot of integrative medicine that you can do, like, acupuncture and a good diet, and meditation, which I did a lot of when I was trying to get pregnant, that can put you into a peaceful state. And I look at, the use of the egg freezing technology, although it is very far from a natural, remedy. It's also very far from a pill. I mean, it's kind of a big deal, and it's kind of a big surgical intervention. I mean, actually, I wouldn't say it was a big surgical intervention.
Well,
I mean, have you had your eggs frozen?
yeah, I froze my
Yeah.
eggs just last year. So I mean, I
Yes.
would say that it's definitely 2 weeks of dedication.
It's dedication. It's like you committed to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. It's not a piece of cake, but at the end of doing it, you feel really good that you did it.
Right. Yeah, I did
So
too. So did you ever think about using your eggs, or you just immediately went to IUIs?
I immediately went to IUIs and was lucky that I got pregnant really quickly. I mean, within, the first 6 months. But I would have used my frozen eggs had it gone on, had I, I think I probably had went on 2 more cycles and I hadn't gotten pregnant. I think I would have turned to use my frozen eggs with IVF.
So, what's your future plans? Do you think that you'll use the eggs, or do you think you have one son, right?
I have a son. Yeah, he's
Okay.
3.5 now. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm one of those people who, 46, I think, is sort of getting to be an age where you're definitely an older mother.
Hmm.
I mean, I know many women that have had children in their late 40s, and it's fine. I don't judge it. I'm not sure that it's the choice for me. I'm really super excited about my writing life and my career and the time I spend with my son and traveling with my son and having enough money to take him on all the adventures that I was privileged enough to go on. So I think 2 kids as a single mom would be a lot. I know tons of single moms by choice that have done it, and I have a lot of admiration for them. I think that you're less portable that way.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I could see myself, more being, merging a family with somebody else who has kids.
Oh, that's a really great thought. I never
Yeah.
conceptually originally thought of that, but that's a very good point.
Yeah.
What would be your biggest advice that you would give women that are debating this idea or thinking about doing it, or
Thinking about
even
freezing their eggs or thinking
freezing
about
their eggs, becoming
or
a
becoming a
choice
single mom.
mom,
Yeah.
or
Well, it's a really big decision to make and it's a really big leap of faith. I think freezing your eggs, if you've got the money or you work for a company and you're in a situation, whether, you were diagnosed with cancer and you need to save your fertility, or you're single, or for whatever reason, I don't judge. We live in an individualist country, and I think if you want to freeze your eggs, freeze them. It's a good tool.
Mhm.
I wouldn't, if a woman didn't have the means to do it, I wouldn't tell her to like max out her credit cards to do it, but then again, it all depends on how important it is to somebody to have a child. Some people spend $10,000 on a Fendi bag.
True.
you know,
It's all
you know,
priorities, right?
right? It's about priorities. I mean, I spend $10,000 to freeze my eggs. I use some inheritance. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a writer. I'm not dripping with money in any way, but I would never spend that money on an expensive bag. I would rather have a month-long experience somewhere,
Yeah.
or
Travel or
freeze my
yeah.
right, exactly, travel or freeze my eggs. But and then in terms of single motherhood, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question. And 40% of children are now born to single moms in America. And I think that there is, I mean, without
Does that include parents that got divorced?
no, no, it includes unmarried women.
Okay.
And I think there are two different kinds of single moms. There are single moms that kind of got into it because they got pregnant by accident, and didn't really plan it out, and they did it when they were younger and they don't have their education, they,
Completed
their
yet?
concept of choice, their economic power is not in a position to be strong. I think the example that single moms by choice set is that we generally do it when we're a little bit older, over 35. We generally have a little bit more means, higher levels of education. And I don't mean to say that every single mom needs to follow that example, because obviously everybody is not that privileged
Sure.
um, to do that. But I do think that, single moms by choice now do stand as an important symbol of, women's economic mobility and independence.
And usually the
So,
choice seems very thought out because they planned it. It wasn't
right. I
something that
think that's
happened to them.
key. I think most of the research have shown that the reason that kids of single moms by choice tend to do well is because it was an active
And
choice.
they wanted
Um,
them
and and I
desperately.
think that I can speak from my own experience that I spent a lot of years thinking about it, and I didn't. I created a real structural plan, and I had a career that I knew I could fit that into. I had, a community and a family that would support it. And I think that what happens sometimes, a woman that gets pregnant unplanned, it's like she hasn't thought out the structural plan of her life, and therefore then runs into problems. And I just think that the message that I want to send is that if you're going to have a baby on your own, that's okay. I mean, people, get to the nuclear family is 25% of the nation now. So, I don't judge that there's one healthy shape of a family. It's just that if you're going to create a family that's a different shape, like a single mom family, you just have to make sure that you really think out and, and are smart about making the decision.
And your
And that would be
support
my main.
system, you must have a good support system, it
I have
seems
an
like.
amazing support system. I
Right,
do.
right.
And I wouldn't have done it had I not had an amazing support system.
Right. So that's really the key in your mind. It takes a village.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a village, and I think that I wish that more politicians and policymakers had the attitude of that it takes a village. Whereas right now I feel like one of the things that was really being pushed is this marriage agenda, and I believe in marriage. I believe everybody
Hmm.
should find love, but I don't believe that by pushing women into this idea that you must get married it really helps the problem, because I think that it's better that we are educated and gain economic power and learn to be independent and find our loves and our partners from that position instead of from a position of economic need or desperation.
Definitely seems like that is a recipe for a more healthy relationship or long
Yeah,
lasting.
definitely.
Yeah.
So
Well, you've given some really great advice, and it sounds like you're just a wealth of information. I mean, I guess
sure.
we'll just have to direct everybody to the book or the newer copy of the book. I have one of
The
the
New York
older
copy of
ones.
the book, and to www.inourown.sweettime.com.
Fantastic.
All
Great.
right. Thank you so
Thank
much for this interview, Valerie.
you. Have a great
Yep.
evening.
Talk to you
Bye
soon.
now.
Bye.